Something strange happened, and I need to get it out. I don't know why, maybe just in case. Just in case it happens again, you know? It's probably nothing. Probably just some prankster. But last night, something crawled under my skin and hasn't let go since. It was getting late. I was in the bedroom, packing, while my girlfriend was in the kitchen making dinner one last meal before we moved out. She was making her famous chicken Alfredo. The apartment was warm, the way it always was. The bedroom was over the laundry room, so the heat from all those dryers seeped in, making it feel thick and stifling. I had my podcast on, filling the space with voices to drown out everything else. I'd learned to live with the random sounds that came with living here. It's a half-decent area, downtown, right on the edge of comfortable. The rent's high, but it had perks-covered parking, a dishwasher that mostly worked. Still, it was noisy. Every night, a guy honks his horn outside, a pattern quick. Sharp blasts every few seconds like he's tapping on the window, trying to get someone's attention. Someone has birds that squawk and screech. Someone else has a dog that whimpers from the balcony, pacing back and forth. And then there's the kids from the school nearby, laughing and playing loud music that rattles the walls. It all blends together, city life, the hum of humanity, something comforting about knowing people are just there, nearby. But then there's the whistler, every night without fail. A single, two-note whistle, short, quick, shrill. Once, twice a pause, then again. That same unsettling pattern, repeating, echoing through the dark. High and piercing, but with a note that lingers, something almost desperate in it, like it's searching. And every night it's the same, like clockwork. I'd hear it over my podcast, creeping in through the window, slipping into my ear no matter how much I tried to tune it out. The whistler wouldn't stop. I kept picturing this faceless figure, a shadow on the sidewalk, moving silently, whistling as if calling something, calling someone. And last night, I don't know what got into me, but I whistled back. Just two short, sharp notes, matching his exactly. I don't know why I did it. I regretted it the instant the sound left my lips, filling the empty air of my apartment. Everything went silent. The whistler's tune had stopped, and I could feel the silence settle like a weight, pressing in from all sides. Then, out of nowhere, I heard footsteps, a slow, shuffling sound, like something dragging, getting closer. I didn't look. I didn't move. I just stood there, frozen, watching the empty doorway, listening as the dragging steps crept closer, slow, deliberate. They stopped right outside my door. A whisper followed. Faint, but clear. Just two words. Found you. I've always been pretty good at whistling. I can do the whole Andy Griffith theme, though I've never mastered that thing with the fingers. Anyway, when I whistled back that night, the other whistling stopped dead. The silence was so sudden, it was like the whole world took a breath and held it. The voices on my podcast kept rolling, but everything outside felt still, too still. I laughed it off, tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just jumpy, but that stillness, it gnawed at me. After a beat, I shrugged, turned my back to the window, and that's when I heard it again, the whistle. Only this time, it was closer, louder. I flinched, I admit it. My heart pounded as the eerie notes drifted in through the walls, sharper now, like they were meant just for me. I glanced back at the window, my nerves frayed, and nearly jumped out of my skin as the bedroom door creaked open behind me. It was just my girlfriend, laughing at the look on my face. She told me dinner was ready, but I could see the way she was watching me, half amused, half worried. At the table, I finally told her about the whistling. How it sounded closer each time, how it unsettled me in ways I couldn't explain. She brushed it off, saying she'd heard some guy whistling around the building before, probably calling for a lost dog. She'd even seen the guy's posters tacked up all over. But the more we talked, the more it didn't add up. Why was he still whistling so late, night after night? After dinner, we headed back to the bedroom, squeezed past the packed boxes and tried to settle in for the night. But not long after the lights were out, the whistle came again, the same haunting, two-note pattern drifting through the silence. My girlfriend grumbled, muttering something about finding this guy and doing serious damage if he didn't let her sleep. I chuckled, trying to lighten the mood, and we started whistling back, playing along, just to mess with whoever was out there. Then the whistle answered, a single note, louder, closer. A chill crawled up my spine, but we laughed it off, answering with a sloppy raspberry. But this time, the reply wasn't playful. It was sharper, longer, closer than ever. The sound seemed to curl around the walls, creeping toward us. My girlfriend and I exchanged a look, her earlier annoyance replaced by something darker, something. Wary, she whispered, maybe we should stop. The whistling continued, growing louder, almost impatient. It was so close now, as if it were just outside the door. I agreed with her, that creeping unease settling into my bones, whispering that something was wrong. Probably nothing, I told myself, just my mind running away with shadows. But then we heard it again, another whistle. Closer, louder, sharper. It was brief this time, clipped and impatient, like something tired of waiting. In my mind, I saw a picture, a red-faced bald man with squinting, furious eyes, clutching an empty leash, whistling again and again, expecting a response, but growing angrier each time he didn't get it. 3 or 4 more whistles cut through the silence, each one tense, angry. Then, finally, quiet. My girlfriend sighed, relaxing beside me. Slowly, I felt myself starting to drift, the exhaustion finally winning over the anxiety. But then bang! The noise came from the living room, jerking us both awake. My heart pounded as I climbed out of bed and peered around the doorway. It was just a small one-bedroom, and we didn't keep weapons or anything. But I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a box had tipped over, or maybe, no, not a burglar. It couldn't be. My girlfriend followed me out, clutching my arm as we checked the locks. The door chain was still in place, and the porch light was out. But there was just enough moonlight filtering in through the thin gap in the curtains to see that everything seemed still. Just as I was about to turn back to bed, we heard it, the whistle. Low, harsh, outside our door. Our apartment's entrance is outside, straight from the staircase. There's no hallway or buffer, just our front door and the echoey metal steps leading down. I couldn't be sure, but it sounded like someone was right there, just inches from the other side of the door. A series of 3 sharp whistles, angry and insistent, cut through the air, rattling the door chain. The image of that bald man flashed in my mind again, his mouth twisted in fury, spittle gathering at the corners, his eyes dark and furious. The door banged, the chain rattled, and my girlfriend's grip tightened on my arm. We stood there, frozen, barely breathing as the whistles came in bursts, each one growing more impatient, more furious, until silence. Just as I started to breathe again, the whistling picked up somewhere nearby. Softer now, but still in bursts of 3, relentless. I turned to my girlfriend, trying to ask if she'd heard it too. But before I could finish a single word, bang, the door shook, the chain vibrating as another whistle screamed through the silence, louder than before, sharp enough to make me flinch. Each whistle was punctuated by a heavy pounding, something slamming against the door, hard and fast. We clung to each other, paralyzed, rooted in place. I don't know how long we stood there, just staring at that door. Eventually, the whistling faded, moving away, growing quieter. A final shrill note pierced the quiet, stretched long and low like a warning, then silence. Finally, we checked the locks again, made sure everything was secure, and crept back to bed, crawling under the covers without a word. We stayed awake, clutching each other, listening to that whistle stretch into one long, low note, a sound that blended into the wind. By the time I fell asleep, I'd convinced myself it must have been the wind. Today, we moved. Just across town, a bit farther from my job. But as I sit here, unpacking, I swear I can hear that same two-note whistle somewhere, faintly, drifting in from somewhere close. We're closer to my girlfriend's job now, settled into a nicer place. The past few days have been chaotic, boxes everywhere, and after finally setting up the bed, the air conditioning decided to die. So we've been unpacking with the windows open, letting in any breeze we could catch. It's nighttime now, quiet. My girlfriend's asleep beside me, and the window is still cracked open. Before I started typing this, I got curious and looked up the guy who was searching for his dog. Apparently, he's been missing for a couple of days. Found his Facebook page full of pictures of his dog. He seemed to really love it. It's late now, and the gentle sound of the wind through the open window has me feeling heavy, drowsy. But just as I went to close my laptop, ready to turn in, I heard it, that whistle. A chill crept up my spine as I glanced around. Just shadows, I told myself. Shadows and exhaustion playing tricks on me. But that whistle, it sounded like it came from somewhere inside the house. I laughed it off, trying to calm my nerves, like when you see a coat draped over a chair in the dark and it almost looks like a person. The feeling passed, logic breaking through. It's late, I'm exhausted, and we're still getting used to this new place with all its strange creaks and hums. But as I sit here in the quiet, I can't shake this prickling unease. It's probably nothing, right? Just the wind, probably.